Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no.
Okay, apologize. I went out. And came back in. Anyway, I apologize. Anyway, we have al-jumla al-fi'liya. We have al-jumla Can you still hear me?
Hear you now. You went out for a second, but you came back.
I know. Al-jumla ismiya. I don't know what's wrong with the internet this morning. So we have a verbal sentence and a nominal sentence. A verbal sentence begins with a noun. Inside of that verbal sentence, it's made up of parts. First up, it's made up of a fi'l because it begins with a fi'l. Then we have a fa'il, a doer, right? The one who does the action. And then we could have, and so I'm going to put in parentheses because we don't always have to have it, al-maf'ulu bihi, which is our object. The action is done to it. The one the action is done to. The object of the verb. Then inside of it, the ismiya, we have what's called a mubtada wal khabar. Mubtada comes from the word bada'a, meaning basically it's what the sentence begins with. It's the beginning. And then this is the khabar, the information about that noun that we began with. Khabar meaning information. Like another word for khabar could be not in grammar syntax, but for instance hadith. Right? Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we could use the word khabar. Right? They're both. It's information about him sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Sahaba. So we have the mubtada and the khabar. Now, in a jumla fi'liya, the fi'l, right? It could be past, present, or command. The fa'il is going to be marfu', right? And the maf'ul bihi is going to be mansub. The mubtada and the khabar, both of them are marfu'. Both of them are marfu'. Now, we gave an example last week that the khabar can be a whole sentence. So we said, for instance, Muhammad Rasul. Muhammadun Rasulun. Muhammad is a messenger. Here's our mubtada, marfu', our khabar, marfu'. Right? Muhammad is a messenger. Then you could say Muhammad Rasulullahi. Right? Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Now, Muhammad is our mubtada, our khabar became a phrase. It's not just one word, it's a phrase. So our khabar could be one word, it could be a phrase, which we say shibhu jumla khabar, we'll get to that in the future, meaning a a phrase. Basically, shibhu jumla is a phrase. It's not a word. It's not a whole sentence. It's like a sentence, right? It's called a phrase in English, right? Then we could say Muhammad.
So Allah has the kasr because it's mudaf ilayh.
Is mudaf ilayh, right? But this whole thing, for instance, we would say about this. We would say Muhammad mubtada marfu', al-Rasul khabar marfu'. Here we're going to say Muhammad mubtada marfu'. Here we're going to say Rasul mubtada marfu' wa huwa mudaf, and it's mudaf. Allah lafz al-jalala majroor mudaf ilayh. Shibhu jumla khabar, right? It's a phrase. It's the khabar. The khabar is a phrase. Fi mahal raf, in the situation of being marfu'. So this whole phrase, we would say, is in a situation of being marfu'. But our sign here is obvious. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. And all that, what I just said, you don't have to learn right now. You learn that in the future. That's when you want to start breaking down the sentences and explaining to people. You don't really want to explain it to people so you know what you're talking about, but rather you want to know that you can break down a sentence, because the more you can break down the sentence, the better you can describe the words, the more you understand. The problem is a lot of people get into grammar and it's addictive. You know, people play Sudoku because it's addictive, right? I don't play it, but people who like numbers, they see all these numbers and they want to fill them in. They do it on a plane, they do it in the car, they have an app on their phone and all this stuff because they love playing with these numbers and figuring it out. That's what Arabic grammar is, and it becomes addictive like that because you start trying to figure out the sentence, and you can start breaking down the smaller parts. Like we said, Dalika is 3 parts, and you're like, oh, I love knowing that the Da means this, and the Lam means this, and the Kaf means this, and okay, but is there a real benefit in that? Yeah, of course, for yourself there is, but once you know it, you know it. You don't have to like focus on it anymore. The more you break down the sentence, the more you understand it. The more you're able to break it down into smaller parts, then the more you're understanding the Arabic language. And the more you can understand, for example, what Allah wants from you when you read the Quran, more what the Prophet ﷺ commanded or forbade you from, or advised you with, or whatever the case is when you read the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So you can understand the Arabic language better. But some people, they take it so far, and that's all they focus on is the language. They don't focus on the religion. We want to keep a balance, right? So you don't have to learn how to say Muhammad marfu', right? Mubtada marfu', Rasul khabar marfu', wa huwa mudaf, wa Allah lafz jalala mudaf ilayh, wa Rasulullah shibhu jumla khabar fi mahal al-raf. You don't have to learn how to say all that, right? All that is just when someone, the sheikh, asks you, what's that sentence mean? What is it? What part of speech is that? How do you know you're saying Rasulullahi correctly? How do you know it's not Rasulillaha? How do you know it's not that? Right? How do you know it's not Rasulillaha or Rasulullahu or Rasulallaha? Or what, how do you know it's not that? Tell me how you know to pronounce it like this. Right? And so you'll be able to break down those sentences and say, no, this is what it is and this is what it means. Right? Because if we put Rasulah, then it becomes mansub for a reason, and something's there controlling it, and why, we want to know that. So we want to be able to pronounce stuff properly. Right? We want to be able to pronounce stuff properly and understand. This next sentence could be, say, Muhammad ذهب إلى السوق. Right? So we have Muhammad is a mubtada, marfu'. Then we need a khabar. But we don't really have a noun here to be marfu'. What we have here is another sentence inside of it. ذهب إلى السوق. So what we're going to do is, and this is how Arabic is, we're going to break down this phrase. Kind of like I said, it's like math. So when you say 2 times 3, 1, or 6 plus 1, right? Then how do you work this problem out, right? You can't just do 2 times 3 and then 6 plus 1 and have your answer. No, you have a formula. First you do what's in parentheses. 6 plus 1 is 7, times 3, 21. Then times 2 would be 42. Your answer would be this. How'd you figure it out? You had to do it in parentheses. So same thing happens here. It's like we're drawing parentheses. Because we don't have just a one word khabar here. Rather we have a 2-word, a phrase, or a whole sentence as our khabar, our information. So we drew parentheses. Let's do within the parentheses first and then go back. So we say dhahaba. Okay, this is a fi'l. Right? The fa'il is mustatir. It's hidden. Right? And then ila harf jar. Suq ismu majroor. Ba'da harf jar. Right? It becomes majroor, a noun which is majroor after the harf jar. So now we have a sentence here, which is fi'l, madi, right? Then this whole sentence is our khabar, right? Fi mahal raf, in the situation of being marfu'. But like I said, all that's extra. But we're going to break down the sentence like this, right? And then if we add inna in front of it, Inna Muhammadan, them dhammas become fathas, and this becomes ismu inna, the noun of inna. And we're going to get there inside of An-Nahw al-Wadih. We already been there, we're just reviewing it. Inna is a particle of nasb, and it's going to change Muhammadun to Muhammadan. Indeed, Muhammad, right, this is the ismu inna. That's what it's called. It's not called the mubtada anymore, because the mubtada is marfu'. But here, once it becomes when it becomes after inna, it's called ismu inna, the noun of inna, and it's mansub. Right? And then dhahaba ila suq. We still break it down the same way. Fi'l madi, al-fa'il mustatir, ila حرف جار سوق اسم مجرور في محل الرفع خبر إن خبر إن is مرفوع. So all of that becomes, like I said, it just breaks it down even more. Now the book takes us in slow stages, and we did this previously, so it's just a review. So we have the mubtada, which is marfu', and the khabar, which is marfu'. So if I scroll down here, we started at a good time, but my internet's held us up, right? Number 9, rule or qaida, huh?
I was going to see if you can explain number 3, because you said it was running.
Yeah, al-jaryu.
Now.
Al-jaryu, yeah, running.
Okay, how's that a noun? Running, something the definite arc in front of it. The running.
Yeah, well, it's just letting you know running. It's not, I mean, we don't have to put alif. For instance, there's different types of alif lam, and this is where Arabic becomes, for instance, when we say alhamdulillah, translate that.
Well, yeah, we would say
alhamdulillah. Huh?
We would just say praise be.
Or we would say all praise is due to Allah.
Oh yeah. Oh, praise. Well, we'll because
But where does all come in? Where does all come in, right? All is not, there's no word for kullu or jami' or like that before alhamd, jami' alhamd, kullu alhamd, right? No, doesn't exist.
We was taught that when it's saying the praise of Allah, it's all inclusive, so we just say
right.
all.
But it's not. But it's not just because we were taught that, and that's the whole beauty of this Arabic language, and that's the meaning of like La ilaha illallah, right? There's no God but God, or there's no God but Allah. That's not correct, because there are gods besides Allah. There's no God worthy of worship, but there are gods. That statement, there's no God but Allah, right, is not a true statement, because there are other gods besides Allah. Now, are there other gods worthy of worship? No. But there are other gods. Somebody takes other gods besides Allah. It happens, right? Allah says if you seen him who takes his desires as a god besides Allah, right? So there, he says in the book that there are other gods. That's why there's a plural for ilah. It's aliha, right? Whereas there is no plural for Allah, right? He is alone. So the point is that there's no God, or there's nothing worthy of worship. That point that we say there, worthy of worship, is built into the Arabic language. Because the way the sentence is, just like if I say la, that's not a complete sentence, right? But if you ask me, am I hungry? And I say la, that's a complete sentence. La became a complete sentence because what was understood is la, I'm not hungry. So when you say La ilaha illallah, that worthy of worship is understood in there, and that's why the Quraysh fought the Prophet ﷺ, because they understood the meaning of it. So the same thing happens, and many times it is not just because this is what we were taught, because it's built in. This alif lam is called alif lam al-istighraq. Al-istighraq.
That's what I'm referring to when I said we was taught that's it's all in there. Just like when you right. Ears and stuff like that. It's already in there. It's understood. And maybe I should have said.
Right. Well, the alif lam al-istighraq means includes every type. Every type. So that's what. So we don't say the praise is due to Allah. We say all praise is due to Allah, because the alif lam is not the. Whereas here, when we say al-qitar, means the train. This alif lam is the alif lam of ta'rif, right? Meaning to make it known which one, to make you know which train. You said the train, not a train. Maybe there's a train that's not fast, right? So we're talking about the train, meaning the one that we can see over there in the background, right? So we say an-nadhafa wajiba. Nadhafa is cleanliness. Wajiba is obligatory. Do we say the cleanliness is obligatory, or would we say cleanliness is obligatory? Cleanliness, right? Cleanliness is obligatory, because this alif lam has a function different than this alif lam and different than this. So they have different functions. So it's not always going to be translated, because sometimes it doesn't mean. So here, this alif lam is of the jins, right? This alif lam is of jins, meaning the type or the genre or the kind, right? That as a whole. So when we say nadhafa, we mean the whole, all types of cleanliness are obligatory. Cleanliness of your body, cleanliness of the clothes, cleanliness of the place where you live, cleanliness of your mouth, cleanliness of your, and nadhafa. It means the type or the genre of something. So the same thing here, alif lam is going to be of the jins, meaning running. Running is beneficial, right? Whether you run fast, whether you sprint, whether you do hurdles, whether you do jogging, whether you do endurance, short-term, long-term, running in general is beneficial. So this alif lam would not be something translated. But there are different types of alif lam, but all that becomes something way in the future. You know, otherwise it's going to become very, very, you know, you're going to complicate yourself a lot, right? As-surah, this is alif lam ta'rif, the surah, right? Not all pictures are pretty, right? But this one, the one they're talking about, as-surah, that they can see, is it at-tufahatu hulwatun. Now this could be multiple ones, and the scholars differ sometimes when you talk about alif lam and al-fatiha. Is it this? Is it that? They differ. You know, there's not an ayah explaining what type of alif lam it is, right? So they differ over it, right? Over different things. So at-tufaha hulwatun. So do we say the apple is delicious, or do we say apples are delicious? Which is meant here? What is the intention behind this sentence there? Allah knows best, right? Both of them make sense. So this alif lam could be the apple, alif lam ta'rif, the apple is delicious, or it could be the alif lam of jins, meaning apples are delicious. You understand?
Well, yeah, I understand, but is that a plural for apples?
Well, it doesn't have to be a plural. If you put an alif lam on it, for instance, ham, is it a plural? You say all praise is due to Allah? No. Right? But because you do it with the alif lam, then you can make it the jins. So for instance, when we say the word anas, right? Is that a plural? No. Now we say people, but is it a plural necessarily? No. Right? Insan. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ الْإِنسِ. It says وَالْجِنِّ. مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ. Right? We did not create the jinn and the mankind. Is mankind here plural? No. Ins becomes insan. Right? Like this. But because you have the alif lam, it means all men and all jinn. Not just one jinn, because there's a plural for jinn called jan. Right? Jan. But here, because it's the jinn, we created the jinn and the ins, the mankind, meaning all jinn and all mankind. So all apples are delicious, right? Although that wouldn't necessarily be the case. Some would be rotten, some would be whatever, sour, right? But in general, right? So is it? So this is the point. You can have different types of alif lam, and so al-jaryu, you wouldn't say jaryun, you would say al-jaryu mufid. Running is beneficial, right? Al-qitar, the train. An-nadhafa, this would be cleanliness. You wouldn't say you wouldn't say the cleanliness. Like an obvious example we don't translate would be like Allah, the God. We just say Allah. Or, you know, if you speak in English, which I don't agree with, you just say God. You don't say the God. You just say God. Because the alif lam is there. But anyway, al-ard, the earth, right? That's alif lam of ta'rif. So, like I said, there's many different types of alif lam, and there's subcategories inside of each one, right? And subcategories inside of each one. The alif lam of ta'rif has, I believe, 3 different types of alif lam of ta'rif, and so on and so forth. But al-jaryu is just like an-nadhafa, right? I'm trying to think of another word. You just open up any page of the Mus'haf almost, I'm sure, and just find something. For instance, when we say aqimu as-salat, establishment of the salat, do we don't necessarily say the salat, right? قد قامت الصلاة. As-salat is قد قامت الصلاة is in this sentence قد قامت الصلاة. Salah is established. We don't necessarily say the Salah is established. We say Salah because the type of alif lam is there, right? Like I said, you could just get into it and make it more and more confusing. But aqim as-salat, when we talk about az-zakat and salat, al-hajj, we talk about the 5 pillars. We don't say the salat and the zakat and the siyam and the hajj, right? We don't talk about what are the 5 pillars. We say the salat and the fasting and or the prayer and the fasting and the poor tax or whatever you want to translate zakat as and the pilgrimage. No, we just say salat. We just say prayer and fasting and poor tax and pilgrimage. Those are the pillars. But we don't say the, although there are as-salat and az-zakat and as-siyam and al-hajj. But because of the type of alif lam is there, we don't make when we talk about salat with alif lam being one of the pillars of Islam, we mean all the salawat. And az-zakat, we mean all the zakat. Not just the zakat, but all zakat. Same thing. Clear?
Pretty much. No, but I guess you'll learn when.
Yeah, it takes time. That stuff, like I said, we're right now we're just trying to figure out general sentences, and then now you want to start breaking down each word in multiple parts.
Because you just say, okay, I know Al as the, then you said, well, running is beneficial. Okay, the running is beneficial. Like that's.
No, like I said, there's different types of alif lam. There's alif lam istighraq, right, which makes all of them. There's alif lam of jins, which makes the type. There's alif lam of
understood.
Ta'rif, which makes something definite, right? Like qitar became al-qitar, right? Al-ard, right? Became the earth. Like a suratun became as-surah, a particular definite one.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different types, inshallah.
Well, that's what I always know, that Al is making it definite and blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, we know now there's differences.
Different alifs, alif lams. Yep. Now we have here in this page we have the rule, 2 rules. Qaida 10 we learned. Al-mubtada ismun marfu'un fi awwal al-jumla. The mubtada is a noun marfu' fi awwal al-jumla. Now let's look at that. Right?
That's awwala.
في أولي.
Okay,
أولي. Right? والخبر اسم مرفوع يكون مع المبتدأ جملة مفيدة. طيب المبتدأ, the noun or the beginning noun, the beginning word of a nominal sentence. I don't know how else to translate it, right? اسم مرفوع, it's a مرفوع noun في أول الجملة, in the beginning of a sentence. والخبر, and the khabar, the information about that mubtada, right, is a ism marfu', it's a marfu' noun. يكون, made up. يكون meaning made up of, or مع المبتدا, made up with the mubtada, brought together, however you want to translate that. Jumlatan mufida. When it comes together with the mubtada, it makes a beneficial sentence. So just to say Muhammad does not make sense. Just to say Rasul doesn't make sense. Right? But when I bring them together, Muhammadun, Rasulun, now Muhammad is a messenger, now makes sense. You were saying something?
Awali. I thought that was first.
Awal, in the beginning, the first, the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Right? Al-Awwal is the first, right? Al-Awwal. Al-Thani. Right? Awwal could be first, it could be the beginning. They're both the same.
I got you.
Now let's look at this, because this number 9 and 10, these qaidas, they're sentences. Right? They're not just a rule, they're actually sentences. So al-mubtada here is actually a mubtada. The word mubtada here is actually a mubtada, and it's marfu'. Al-mubtada'u. Ismun is the khabar. The mubtada is a ism. It's a noun. So what we're saying here is the mubtada is a noun. If I just said that, al-mubtada ismun, that's a complete sentence. Al-mubtada ismun. The mubtada is a noun, and the khabar about mubtada is marfu'. And then marfu' is an adjective describing ism. It's a marfu' noun. It agrees with it. It doesn't have alif lam, just like ism doesn't have alif lam. It's singular, it's singular. It's male, it's male. Fi is harf jar. Awwali is a noun called ismu majroor because it's following the harf jar, right? It's a majroor noun, right? Because it's after fi. Fi awwal al-jumla. Awwal al-jumla is mudaf ilayh. So jumla is majroor because it's mudaf ilayh. Now this whole thing here is our khabar, right? This is the actual particular khabar, but then all of this becomes part of it, right? So then you have the next sentence, number 10, next qaida. Al-khabaru ismun marfu'. Al-khabar in this sentence is our mubtada. It's marfu'. It's our beginning noun. He says al-khabar ismun. Ismun is our khabar here, marfu'. Marfu' is the adjective agreeing with it. Yukawinu ma'al mubtada, right? Mubtada'in ma'a is a dharf, right? Kind of like harf jar. Mubtada'i, right? Al-mubtada'i here, mudaf ilayh. Jumlatan mufidatan, meaning this is the maf'ulun bihi. What does it become? It becomes this, right? Anyway, so now you're able to even break down the definitions a little bit. Al-mubtada ismun marfu'un fi awwal al-jumla. The mubtada is a marfu' noun in the beginning of a sentence. Wal khabaru ismun marfu', and the khabar is a marfu' noun. Yukawwinu ma'al mubtada'i, made up with the mubtada, jumlatan mufidatan. It makes a complete sentence. Is that clear?
No. Jumlatan. That's supposed to be a sukoon over the mean.
Yeah. Not all the vowels are written. There's no vowels here.
Okay.
No vowels here.
I understand. I'm just.
There's no sukoon on that scene right there. There's no kasr on that fi. There's no kasr on that lam. Why? Because we know what comes after fi is la. There's no meme or sukoon there. There's no fatah on that lam. There's no fatatain there because it's an adjective describing the jumla. We know these things.
No.
You don't gotta have all your vowels. Don't be lazy on me, man.
No, I'm just looking at them, because I'm trying to pick up this little stuff here, and I'm looking. I'm saying, okay, I see it like on mubtada, so I said, okay, but why we know that's supposed to be, that's the word, mubtada, but
yeah, marfu'. The vowels aren't there either. Marfu', just they put some in, they don't put some in.
No.
Right? طيب. الجملة الفعلية, we already did that. Why did we already do that? Because we already talked about its parts. Jumla ismiya, we already did that. Right? Nasb fil mudari. Okay, then we got into a little bit more complicated here. Nasb fil mudari. Let's read the qaida first. And then we can go back to an example if we need to.
Nasbul fil.
Nasbu fi'l mudari. Now, if you remember, we talked about Arabic quite a few times. Mabni and mu'rab. We talked about this. In the Arabic language, we have kalam. Right? We have 3 categories of words. We have ism, we have fi'l, we have harf. Right? Ism, we have a number of types of asma. Right? Numbers of types. We have different types of asma. Fi'l, we have 3 types. We have madi, past. We have mudari. We have amr, past, present, command. And harf, we also have different types. Now, inside of kalam, we have something called mabni. And this is something we learned in the second portion of this book. Right? And we stopped after doing a little bit of it, and we started doing review because of traveling, and we haven't stopped doing review. So let me erase this right here and put it in a different color. Mu'rab. Now mabni means it stays the same. It never changes. Right? It doesn't become fu or fa. It's always going to be fi. Min doesn't become minu, mina, mini. It's always going to be min. Now you might put something on it for reading purposes, but we're talking about grammatically. Right? There's certain words that never ever change. They're always going to be what they are. Those harfs, they never change. They never change. As we said, fi is always fi, ila is always ila. It never becomes ilu or ila, ili, ila. Never. Never changes. Right? The fil amr never changes. The fil mudari never changes. Ever. From the asma we have, for instance, what was I just looking at? Okay. From the asma we have, for instance, Dama'ir. Dama'ir are pronouns. Huwa, hiya, nahnu, ana, anta, anti, antuma, right? Hum, all these things. These are pronouns. They never change. Ka, ki, kum, kunna, hum, hunna. They never change. Dama'ir never change. Right? Asma al-ishara. Ishara. Ishara. Right? Like hadihi, hada, dhalika, tilka. They're never going to change. Right? They're not going to change. They're always going to be hada, hadihi, dhalika, tilka, haulai, ulaika. Even if they're in a place of being majrur. If you put hada in a place of majrur, it's still going to be hada. Now, its state is going to be majrur, but you're not going to see the signs of it because hada is mabni. So now, what does that mean? Out of the 3 types of, or rather, we have 5 things here, 5 major things. We have harf, fil madi, fil mudari, fil amr. That's 4, and asma. That's 5. Out of those 5 things, 3 of them, I want to say 60%, 3 of them are mabni, and some of our asma are mabni too, other than the dama'ir and ishara, meaning they never ever change. So we're not even talking about how those nouns change at the end because they're mabni. Now, when it comes to mu'rab, meaning that the ends of the words will change due to something entering in on them, then the mudari, it changes. And many asma change, but not all of them, but most of them. Right? So now we're only talking about less than 40% of the types of words, not necessarily the words, because there could be more mudari than madi and more asma than verbs or whatever, right? But 40% of the types of our words, that's what we're dealing with in Nahw. So when we say a nasb, we have the fi'l, for instance. If we go back here, and we go down, let me write something here. Let me see. We say akala, shariba, jalasa. Right? This past tense of he ate, he drank, he sat, it's always going to have that fatha there. Akalat, sharibat, jalasat. Doesn't matter. Right? Dhahabat, kharajat, all of that. Astaghfarat, right? All of those, they're going to be there. Arsalat, arsala, they're always going to be the same. No matter what you put in front of it, this fatha will never ever change because it's a fi'l madi. No matter what comes in front of this fi'l madi, it's never going to change. So for instance, hawaltu, I tried. Right? Hawaltu, jalastu, sharibtu, akaltu. It's always going to be the same. It's always going to have that sukoon on my letter before my tu. No matter what I put before it, it's never going to change this sukoon ever. Versus in the mudari, we can say, for instance, yansuru, right? Yansuru. And then we can put N in front of it. No, not us. N in front of it, and it can become yansura. Because there's certain things I can put in front of the present tense verb, the mudari', which will make it mansub. So that's the title of this chapter here. The title is Nasb al-fi'l al-mudari'. Nasbu or nasabu al-fi'l al-mudari'. The making of the fi'l mudari' mansub. Now all verbs, kulu. Say kulu. Yashrabu, right? Yajlisu. The fi'l mudari', its origin is a dhamma, marfu', its origin. If you just say any verb, right? Amara ya'muru, right? It's going to be, its origin is going to be a dhamma. But there's things that we can put in front of it to make it mansub or to make it majzoom with a sukoon on it. But a verb, a present tense verb, or any other verb will never be majroor, ever. Majroor is only for nouns. Majroor is only for nouns. And this sukoon, this jazm, is only for verbs. Right? Nouns will never be sakin at the end of a noun. Nouns, verbs are never majroor, it's only nouns. And nouns are never sakin, that's only for verbs. So there are things that we can put in front of a present tense verb which will make it mansub or Mejzoom. In this section here, we want to talk about the things which will make it Mejzoom. So for instance, and I know, let me add a few minutes here real quick. I might have to recalibrate this pen or something. Okay. Uridu. This is a present tense verb. Uridu. You see our dhamma because there's nothing in front of it. So it's going to be a dhamma. Uridu. And uhsinu. And uhsina. Uhsinu became uhsina because of an. Arju. And ya'tadila. And made ya'tadilu become ya'tadila. Yasuruni and tazurana. Tazuru became tazura because of an. Right? Lan. Akdiba. Lan is a particle which is a negation about the future. It makes the present tense verb following it mansub. Lan yafuza. Lan adriba. Yafuzu adribu. When I put len in front of it, became yafuza adriba. And in this sentence here, right, these group of sentences which are explaining here two different things. We have this group and that group. This one is a conditional sentence. So it says, تجيب بذلك من قال سأزور مدينتكم. I'm going to visit your city. Someone says to you, I'm going to visit your city. سأزور مدينتكم. I'm going to visit your city. Then you say to them, إذن تقيم عندنا. Then you will stay with us. Then you will stay with us. You come to my city, you will stay with me. That response, which is a conditional sentence. You're visiting my city, then you will stay with me. That's a condition. When you visit my city, then you're going to stay with me. So if someone says, Sa'akunu aminin, I'm going to be trustworthy. Right? Then you say, Idhin tarbiha tijaratuk. Then your tarbiha, your tijara, your business transactions are going to be profitable. If you're trustworthy, then your business transactions are going to be profitable. Why? Because people are going to trust you and they're going to come to you. They're not going to try to talk you down because they know that you're not lying to them to inflate the prices to get more money because you're a trustworthy person. So people are going to come to you because they know they're going to get a good deal with you. If they can get $1 off, they're going to get it. If they can't, then they know that they can't because you're going to lose money, and they don't want you to lose money. Why? Because they know you're a trustworthy guy. Right? If someone says, سَأُغْلِقُ النَّوَافِذ, I'm going to close the windows, إِذِن يَفْسُدَ الْهَوَاء, then the air is going to become stale. Right? We're going to need, it's not going to be fresh anymore. Idhin yafsada. So these became mansub after idhin, which is a condition. And then here we have K, which means in order to, or so that. In order to, or so that. So we say jittu K ata'allam. I came, jittu. I came, K ata'allama. So that I could learn. Kharajtu, I left out, I exited. K atanazzaha, so that I could take a stroll. Right? Ata'allamu, I learn. K akhduma al-watan, so that I can serve the nation. Right? So I could serve the nation. Al-watan is what they call like the nation, like in Kuwait, Watan of Kuwait, that's what they call it, right? So I could serve. Go ahead.
Going back up to the like 9 and 8. So
Okay.
it's a condition that's making this with the fatah, or is it the
Right, it's the condition, but the word of our condition here is in.
okay.
So therefore, idin is like, therefore, I'm going to visit your city. Then you're going to stay with me.
Okay.
I'm going to be a trustworthy person. Then you're going to be successful. I'm going to close the windows. Then the air is going to become stale. Right? So this idin is the sign which making it conditional, right? This is the conditional particle. This is kind of what it means. It's conditional. Then you will do this. Not necessarily translate. Then you could translate it other things, but that's what the condition is, right? So if we read it, if we go down, let's read our qaida. But before we get to our qaida, let's read our bahth, which is if we look at the sentences. يشتمل كل مثال من أمثالة السابقة على فعل مضارع. These sentences, these examples above, these previous examples, right? They contain a present tense verb, فعل مضارع. قبله أحد الأحرف الأربع. Before it, before the present tense verb, is one of the four particles, an, lan, idhin, or kay. One of those four appears before the fi'l mudari. وإذا تأملت, and if you were to contemplate, تأملت آخر كل مضارع. If you were to contemplate the end of every present tense verb, مسبوق بواحد من هذه الأحرف الأربع, which is preceded by one of these four particles, في هذه الأمثال, in these examples, وفي غيرها, and in other than them, وجدته منصوبا, then you will find that verb which is preceded by one of these four, منصوب. ولكنك إذا حذفت هذا الحرف, but if you were to take away that harf, an, lan, idhin, or kay, وجدت فعل مرفوعا, you would find that فعل مرفوع. ومن ذلك, and from that, يفهم أن هذه الأحرف, that these particles, تنسب الفعل, that they make the verb المضارع, the present tense verb, منسوب. الذي يأتي بعدها, that comes after it. The present tense verb that comes after an, lan, idhin, and kay, it becomes منسوب. So the qaida, ينسب الفعل المضارع, the present tense verb, as we see, this is the file because it's marfu', right? The present tense verb becomes منسوب متى سبقه أحد النواسب الأربع. Meta, when. Sabaqahu, precedes it. Ahadu, is the file. One of the nawasib al-arba, one of the four nawasib. Right? One of the four nawasib, meaning those things which make things mansub. One of the four nawasib precedes it. Right? Wahiyya, and they are an, lan, idhin, and kay. An, lan, idhin, kay. If an, lan, idhin, kay come before a fi'l mudari, it's going to be mansub. Understood? A fi'l mudari is normally marfu'. But if an, lan, idhin, or kay come before it, it becomes mansub. And then we're going to learn things that if they come before it, it becomes majzoom. But the asl, the origin of a fi'l mudari is that it is marfu'. There are nawasib and there are jawazim. There are nawasib that come before it, which make it mansub, and there are jawazim which come before it, which make it majzoom. Is that clear?
Yeah.
I shouldn't be talking a foreign language anymore, man. We're learning Arabic, man. This isn't the first time we've been through this either. This is the third time we've been through this.
We getting there. I'm catching on. Yeah, I'm not saying you're going too fast, but I can see it. I'm. It's just that like I said, you're in Arabic, but
Well,
I
if you
understand.
were
I understand what you're saying, though.
if you were to go through and do all the examples, the tamrinat here, the lessons and exercises, it might become clearer. But what we do, because many of these exercises, you're not going to know the words.
Yeah.
Right? لن يبيع أبي حصانه هززت الشجرة كي يسقط ثمرها لا يجوز للإنسان أن يجلس في مجرى الهواء فتحت نوافذ الحجرة كي يتجدد الهواء هواءها. All this is like everyday speech, and that's fine. But if you want to learn everyday speech, you go hang out with the guy in the corner store and pick it up, in the fish and chicken market or something. But you want to learn Islamic studies, and so that's what we're focusing on. And then we take this and we use it our examples. So we say, as an example, give me 1 second. Let me add 5 more minutes, and then I'll be done. I might not even need them all or any of them. We'll see. Ashhadu an la. I would just go because that's a different one. Give me a second. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar. Okay. Rasulullah. This isn't exactly the same, but it's some. Ashhadu. This is a ashhadu. Ashhadu. This is a present tense verb. Ashhadu. Anna. Not an, but anna. Muhammadar. Anna made Muhammad mansoob. Right? Ashhadu. I bear witness that Muhammad Rasulullah. Right? I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Right? There's nothing changing Rasul. It's the khabar. Yeah, right? It's kind of like the khabar. Yeah. Right? So if you didn't have anna wa ashhadu, you just say Muhammadun Rasulullah. So there's nothing changing that right now. Right? But ashhadu, like here. So we could say lots of sentences. I mean, lots of stuff. If I just look at, for instance, the hadith that we did yesterday. Let's look. The hadith that we did yesterday was the last one. Let me look. Let me look through the ones that we did just yesterday, and then I don't see an Atlanta in the K, but there's plenty of them, I'm sure. We have hatta is something which changes it. So we said la yu'minu ahadukum hatta yakuna. Hatta changes the verb to mansoob. Hatta yakuna. It was yakunu, but when we put hatta in front of it, it became yakuna because of hatta, right? And there are examples that we can find inside of what we're learning. So that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to go over the rules and then use them. The only problem is, if we take the book itself, it's going to saturate us with a bunch of examples. But the problem is that's a bunch of vocabulary that you don't necessarily need to know right now. Not that you don't need it. You do need it. But to go over through all the examples, we would go through one chapter. You would need a whole week, basically. You would need a whole week of hours, 1 hour, 6 days a week to do this one chapter with its exercises, right? With its exercises. And then on top of that, you wouldn't be studying, unless you want another hour of class every day, you wouldn't be studying the hadith and the books of the ulama. So by doing this, we're trying to combine the best of both worlds. The problem is, you're not going to necessarily find a lot of N, Lens, Idn, and K's inside of our hadith or books right away. It's going to be less. Whereas here, you're going to have, just look at this. You got this example. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, plus the ones that we did up top, which was 12. And then you got another 14 examples. That's 24 more. And then you got another set of exercises with another 10. And then you got another one where you write this sentence. That's it, So, I mean, you're going to have 50, 60, 70 examples right after that. of N, Len, Idden, and K. N, Len, Idden, and K. You're going to have 50, 60, maybe 100 examples inside of these exercises. The problem is, like I said, it would take a whole week to study that. It would take a whole week to study and go through all of those exercises for each chapter. And you would be picking up vocabulary that you don't necessarily want to pick up right now. You know, it's not necessarily for reading the books, and that's more important. You know, that's why we started it, to focus on reading books and not conversating. You know, you don't want to necessarily read Alf Layla wa Layla. You don't want to read 1001 Nights. You don't want to read, you know, Dale Carnegie's book in Arabic. You want to read Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's book, Salih al-Fawzan's book, like this, you know. So that's what we've been trying to focus on. Whereas if we did the examples, then those would be examples of the everyday Arabic language. So some of the stuff might take slower, but if you take your notes and you go back, if it was too fast, and you go back and you play and pause it and do all that, you're going to benefit a lot, man. But if you're a armchair learner, and you're just sitting there and I'm going to pick up what I pick up and look and listen, and I'm not going to write no notes, I'm not going to go back and study, then it's going to take a long time. You understand?
No.
If you go back and you study and you take the notes and review, it's going to pick it up. It's going to speed it up. But if you just sit there, and I'm not saying anyone's doing it. I don't know, you know, I can't see what anyone's doing. But if we're not going back over the notes, we're not writing it down, we're not putting it on a little piece of paper and going through it, you know, throughout the day, then that's what's going to happen to us. Anyway, we didn't get very far today, but we did 2 chapters, I think, 2 or 3 qaidas. Yeah, 3 qaidas, 2 in the last one and 1 here or something. So that's fine. We don't have to go. The goal is not to speed up, but the goal is also to do something. We do want to get somewhere. We don't want to just keep focused on the same thing. Right? Anyway, next week, inshallah, we'll go over the jazm of the fi'l mudari', and then we will what was this? Examples. What is this? What is this rule here? Like I'm missing something here or something.